Just an absolutely jam-packed episode of Carving Up Live that we got on tap for you guys tonight. Going to start with Bill Belichick. Very controversial news that we got yesterday that he is not a first-ballot Hall of Famer. I'll explain to you why. He is a Hall of Famer, but it's not insanity that he didn't get into the first try. Talk about that. Also get to the big news that broke in the NBA this morning. Giannis Antetokounmpo looks like he's on his way out of Milwaukee. He is officially ready to move on from the Bucks and vice versa. Who are the best teams that could potentially acquire him in the next week or so before next Thursday's trade deadline? Also get to the Buffalo Bills hiring Joe Brady to become their new head coach. It's not even that I hate the hire. It just does not make sense. It's not consistent on what the Bills reportedly were looking for based on that press conference they had last week. Let's discuss that. Also, Bryson's best 10, my top 10 Super Bowls of all time as we near Super Bowl 60 in a week and a half. And at the end of today's show, I'm starting to warm up to Mike McCarthy just a little bit. I'll get to that and all the topics we have on this show later on. Carving It Up is absolutely loaded on a Wednesday. So let's drop the beat, baby. Here we go. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on YouTube as well as on X, on Twitch. For some reason, Facebook and IG are giving me some issues, but regardless, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitch, we're on X, so we're plenty of different avenues where you can watch this show. I'm Bryson Carver, as always, and I really, honest to God, did not expect today to be as loaded a show as it was, because, usually Wednesday, carving up the context, Bryson's best 10. During the NFL regular season, I'm predicting a Thursday night game. Well, obviously, the Thursday night game, that hasn't been on the table for a month, basically. We don't even have a football game this weekend. We got to wait another 2 weeks, or 10 days, I guess to be exact, for Super Bowl 60 in Santa Clara. And all of a sudden, in the last 24 hours or so, we've had coaches get hired. We've had potential Hall of Fame coaches not get into the first ballot. Get to that in just a moment. We got, I think, the second best player in all of basketball. Once that in Milwaukee, finally. Who are the teams I think are very much in the running for Giannis? It was reported that a legit contender in the West just pulled out of the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes if they were ever in them. Get to that. Also, my top 10. So Bryson's best 10. Top 10 Super Bowls of all time. There's some good ones in there, and I'll just spoil it just a little bit. Almost all of them are recent. Like almost all of them. So we got tons to get into on today's show. But first, much outrage yesterday in the NFL world. Bill Belichick, widely considered the greatest coach in the history of the NFL, did not get in the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. So before we get into any of this, we're going to make the opening segment of the show. It is a Wednesday, carving up the context. So, as the head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, primetime Deion Sanders says, "Give me my theme music." On this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, we're going to talk about Bill Belichick not getting into the Hall of Fame. And before we get into sort of the minutia of why, and you probably see the title of either the show or the live show or the YouTube video if you're watching after the show's gone live, is that I don't think that this is just the travesty that people are making it out to be. Before I give you my opinion, let's get Tom Brady's opinion. I mean, he is the greatest player in the history of the National Football League. He talked to Boston Radio and WEEI. Let's hear what Tom Brady had to say about this.
I just think that, to me, I don't understand it. I mean, I was with them every day. If he's not a first-ballot Hall of Famer, there's really no coach that should ever be a first-ballot Hall of Famer, which is completely ridiculous because people deserve it. And he's incredible. There's no coach I'd ever want to play. I'd rather play for. If I'm picking one coach to go out there to win a Super Bowl, give me one season, I'm taking Bill Belichick.
Listen, I get that, Tom. The bulk of Tom's success came with Bill. All of Bill's success came with Tom, which sort of leads me into the initial part, because we can obviously talk about the fact that, Bill getting in, the resume is what it is. He's got more Super Bowls than anybody. He's got the second most wins to anybody in history, only second to the late, great Don Shula. And, how is he not in the Hall of Fame? Why he isn't in the Hall of Fame is, let's be honest, it's a mix of pettiness on the part of some of the voters. Bill Polian, who's a Hall of Fame GM in his own right, who, admitted publicly or said publicly, I don't remember if I voted for him or not. Like, dude, yeah, you do. The Patriots were the biggest stumbling block to the Colts not getting over the hump with Peyton Manning for all those years. There's animosity there, especially when you consider the second aspect of, to me at least, him not getting the Hall of Fame the first ballot. Spygate. People are saying, oh, the two scandals. I think people who really know what they're talking about in the National Football League know, as I've said for years on the show, Deflategate was a sham. It was a non-controversy because it happened to involve the Patriots. And I'm not a Patriots fan. I'm a Steelers guy. But that was a non-starter. We don't have time to get into that. The NFL did a study. All I'll tell you is that the NFL did a study the following season, 2015, in games with similar conditions to that 2014 AFC title game that the Colts and Patriots played. And in all of those situations, every single one, the balls were the exact same PSI as the Patriots were. So Deflategate was a non-story and was blown out of proportion. Spygate was not. Spygate was a situation where for basically a decade, more or less, Bill Belichick was openly taping other teams' practices. In fact, Spygate, you can maybe say the tail of Spygate, so to speak, went as recently as 2019, the last season, Belichick and Brady were together. Folks may not remember this story. I remember the infancy of this podcast talking about this story where a Patriots staffer was caught recording the Cincinnati Bengals, who at the time were awful, recording their sideline. It's like getting hand signals, which is a big no-no. You cannot do that. So Belichick has always, if not, towed the line, flat out stepped over the line as it pertains to cheating, what have you. That, along with pettiness from people like Bill Polian, is why he did not get on the first ballot. If I were a voter, I would have voted for Bill Belichick. I want to make that abundantly clear before I get into the specifics about why I don't think it's outrageous that he didn't get in. Is that, again, the resume, it is what it is. Like, there's no morality clause like there is in Major League Baseball, which I think is pretty dumb. I mean, there are open racists in the Hall of Fame of Major League Baseball. Like, there are some pretty sketchy people in, but the morality clause didn't kick in. Like, I think it's ridiculous. It should be judged. I mean, it should be judged on what you did on the field. O.J. Simpson's in the Hall of Fame. I mean, and that happened for that, but you could easily take him out if they wanted to abide by those rules. Regardless, this idea, and I've pushed back on it for years, that Bill Belichick is the greatest coach of all time is a farce. It's flatly untrue. And so the reason I say that is, number one, when you think about what Bill did with this franchise, sorry, I'm having to deal with some issues there right now on Facebook. Here we go. Okay, yeah, Facebook is giving us issues. We're not able to get the show on there. The issue with Bill Belichick being the greatest coach of all time, or the idea of it at least, all of his success, every shred of it, came with Tom Brady. Every shred of it. What was Bill Belichick without Tom Brady? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we had this graphic from a few months ago. He was a below 500 head coach. He was fired twice. Between 1991 and 1995, which was his first head coaching job in Cleveland, 2000, the first year, Brady was on the roster, but Brady threw, I think, 3 passes that season. Then 2020 through 2023, the 4 years post-Brady, he won 42% of his games, no division titles, no conference title games, obviously no Super Bowl appearances and Super Bowl wins. Well, for those that are curious, of course, we all know Tom ended up on the Buccaneers winning a Super Bowl, all of that. But I was thinking about this in the last few days. I'm like, wait a second. We talk about the Brady-Belichick aspect. If you had to power rank, or if you had to define, if you said there are 3 central characters to the entire 20-year run, more or less 20-year run of the New England Patriots dynasty, who would those 3 figures be? It would be the quarterback, Tom Brady. It would be the head coach, Bill Belichick. It would be the owner, Bob Kraft. We now have, well, I guess we had it beforehand, before this season, but we now have an extended, period of seeing what each of those individuals have done without one another. We showed you Bill. Got fired from Cleveland, bad first season in New England, bad 4 seasons post-Brady, which we'll get into in just a moment, a big aspect of why he's not the greatest coach ever. And then obviously college, but North Carolina, they sucked. They were a 6-6 team, hired Bill, got worse. Tom, as we all know, went to Tampa in a COVID year, no OTAs, no preseason, no ability to build chemistry with these guys, wins the Super Bowl immediately. By the way, the next year wins the division. Year after that, also wins the division. So Tom was still second to last year in the league. Tom was an MVP candidate. Third to last year in the league, he was a Super Bowl MVP. But the Bob Kraft element of it is interesting. If you had to ask somebody 10 years ago, most important figures of the Patriots dynasty, it would be a battle. People would argue who's the more important, Belichick, Brady, and they put Bob Kraft at a pretty distant third. I'm not so sure he isn't in second at this point, because Bob Kraft, before Bill got there, 3 playoff appearances, 2 division titles, got to a Super Bowl, lost to the Packers. I think that was 1996. And then immediately, 2 years after Bill is fired, gets to another Super Bowl. The Jerome Mayo thing didn't work at all. They found their quarterback, hired Vrabel, spent in the offseason. Bam, Patriots are back in the Super Bowl. So Kraft had success without Bill and Brady. Brady has had success without Kraft and Bill. Bill's had no success without Kraft and Brady. So that's number one. Number two, the element of this that I find really, really interesting. What is one of the main components about being an excellent coach? Talent evaluation. Seeing what you have on your roster, seeing what you have in front of you and saying, okay, this set of individuals put my team the best chance, give us the best chance to succeed. Bill Belichick, the alleged greatest coach of all time, looked at Tom effing Brady. 1 year removed, by the way, from winning a Super Bowl. 2 years removed from being a league MVP at age 40. And even his quote-unquote bad season, the Patriots won 12 games with a god-awful receiving core and won the AFC East. Bill Belichick looked at his roster. Great defense, but he saw aging offensive line, running game, not great. Receiving core, post-Gronk and Edelman was past his prime. I mean, by far the worst in the NFL. He looked at his offense and been like, I can do better than number 12. And then number 12 goes on to Tampa and wins instantaneously with the Bucs. Not only went to the 49ers or to Pittsburgh or Green Bay, Tampa Bay, who had prior to Brady had the worst winning percentage in all of the North American professional sports. So as a talent evaluator, he's atrocious. We know this because he controlled the Patriots drafts for the last decade or so he was there. What did he draft? 2 offensive Pro Bowlers or 1 offensive Pro Bowler post-Gronk, and that was Mac Jones. We see with the Shedeur Sanders news recently, the Pro Bowl is a complete joke, especially at the quarterback position. So can't evaluate talent. So much so. Remember that last draft in New England? Do we not respect the Rams, one of the most well-run franchises, not just in the NFL, but in sports? Sean McVay, Les Snead are doing a press conference. And we may clip this up and put it on the YouTube video later, but they're watching the draft. They're doing a press conference with the media. They're watching the draft on like a TV in the corner of the press room. They see Cole Strange drafted in the first round by the Patriots, and they are both openly laughing at the pick. So Belichick, bad talent evaluator, looked at the GOAT, who was still excellent, as evidenced by his career in Tampa, and said, I can do better. Something else that I think needs to be mentioned. Listen, I flatly reject the idea that Bill Belichick's the greatest coach ever. I will not go on the show and say there's not argument. Of course, if you have the most Super Bowl wins ever for a head coach, courtesy of Tom Brady, but you got the second most wins ever to Don Shula, of course you got a case. It's the reason most people have you as the GOAT. I happen to think, let's bring Tom Landry and Vince Lombardi and Chuck Noll, and in my opinion, the greatest coach ever, Bill Walsh, who literally changed offensive football forever. West Coast offense, whole NFL runs the West Coast offense. Did you know that Bill Walsh, he didn't get on the first ballot, the second ballot, the third ballot? Took him 4 tries. Bill Walsh, the offensive mastermind he was, took him 4 tries to get in the Hall of Fame. Now, part of that is because there's this weird situation with voting where only one coach can get in per cycle. Like someone pointed out, and dang, now Mike Shanahan's going to have to wait another year. Like that's a flawed part of the voting system that needs to change. And part of the voting system as well needs to be more transparent. Like I'd like to know the people who did not vote Belichick in the Hall of Fame. I think there needs to be, if you're going to make that case, be willing to stand on it and make your case. Again, I would have voted for him. The resume is what it is. You can't argue with it. What you can say, as we do on the segment all the time, is look at the context and see literally all of his success, with no exception. I guess 1 playoff appearance in Cleveland, but come on, came with the greatest quarterback, the greatest player in the history of the 100-year history of the league. Said player won a Super Bowl without him. The owner who fired him said, went to a Super Bowl in the 90s. He's gone to another Super Bowl. We'll see if the Patriots end up winning it. 2 years after he's gone. Bombs the draft, kicks the GOAT out. By the way, embarrasses himself post-Patriots without North Carolina's win, both on and off the field. And again, I'm not saying I agree with this. Fair or unfair, it does matter. Again, in any industry, how you treat people matters. It just does. I'm sorry, it does. We know how Bill was with the media for years. We know how cold-hearted Bill was with cutting players the way that he did, even when they were still, at their peak or close to it. All at the expense of winning. Well, when you stop winning, when you're telling Tom Brady, hey, take pay cuts, if you take pay cuts, I'm going to load the roster. And then Tom Brady looks around, he's like, I'm throwing to Gunnar Olszewski and Chris Hogan. Like, it doesn't look like you're loading the roster that much. Maybe do a little bit more. And Belichick looks at Tom and says, I can do better than you. I can go with old wash Cam Newton and then later Mac Jones. That'll work better. So in this week's edition of Carving Up the Context, I would have voted for Belichick to get on the first ballot. I want to make that abundantly clear. But this idea that it's a travesty of the NFL is just not true. It's not. And so that's where I'm at in this entire story. Got some comments here. We got a comment say, honestly, I hope you watch the Puppy Bowl instead of the Super Bowl. I think the Super Bowl is going to be pretty good. Boss Sports, I figured Tim would have something to say. My good friend hosts the Boss Sports Summit. Don't use Belichick without Brady is your argument. How did Tom Landry do after Staubach? How did Null do after Bradshaw? How did Johnson do after Aikman? Hallis after Luckman, etc.? So here's what I will say. Number one, completely fair points. Completely fair. Chuck Noll, I think maybe went to another couple playoffs post Bradshaw when Bradshaw retired in the early 80s. Do this off the top of my head. You say Johnson after Aikman. I don't know. If Johnson had been given the opportunity to stay in Dallas and build a dynasty there, like that to me is different than Noll and Belichick. Hallis after Luckman, I'll be honest. I don't. I have not looked into the history of the NFL pre-Super Bowl era. George Hallis is obviously one of the greatest coaches ever. Tom Landry after Staubach still went to, I think, one or two NFC championship games, so he still was successful. Walsh actually moved on for the 49ers when Montana was still there, so that's a different story. We'll never know with Bill Walsh. So I think that's number one. Number two, he says wrong. He wasn't taping practices. That was proven false, but in the Boston Herald and ESPN made a retraction for that. It was taping sideline signals in not agreed upon places at the stadium. Still, we literally saw they were caught doing so at the Bengals stadium back in 2019, and the Patriots I don't think paid that bad of a fine for it. I feel like they were penalized more for Deflategate, which was a sham scandal, than Spygate, which was a real legitimate scandal. And so that's where I'm at. Like, again, do I feel bad for Bill? Not really. I'll be honest, I really don't. When you treat people like garbage for 25 years, if this is the way of getting back, it's petty. I don't even agree with it, to be honest with you. But is it unjust? No, it's not. By the way, glass half full here. He can get to go in the Hall of Fame with Gronk next year. Or if the Hall of Fame wants to be really petty, as they were with Terrell Owens, who took 3 tries to get in the Hall of Fame. If it takes Belichick 3 tries, guess who will get in the Hall of Fame with? Tom Brady. Who I think, listen, I've said in this show, and then we'll get to the honest story. I've said about, the Brady Hall of Fame thing, because I remember they said it took the Hall of Fame committee like 13 seconds to discuss whether Peyton Manning was a Hall of Famer. I'm of the mindset, we're talking about the greatest player in the history of the league, without question. He's got more championships and he's got more Super Bowls than any franchise. I say move it up a year, put Brady in, Gronk gets in, Belichick gets in. Kraft's going to get in this year. I would be shocked if he doesn't. I've always questioned, Kraft, his resume is literally double that of Jerry Jones, and Jerry's in. And Jerry should be in, by the way. How is Kraft not in? Regardless. Let's shift to the NBA. So, this has been coming in the pipe for a long time. This Giannis Antetokounmpo story with the Milwaukee Bucks, which right now he's actually hurt. He's got a strained calf. He's going to be out for a while. He's injured. So, it was reported today, Shams Charania of ESPN, he comes out and says, Giannis and the Bucks are officially, the word to use, ready. They are ready to part ways. And the fact of the matter is, when you look at the Bucks in the standings right now in the Eastern Conference, they're a terrible basketball team. They've got in my mind, the second best player in the world, having one of the best seasons of his career, and they sit right now at 12th place in the Eastern Conference below the Charlotte Hornets, which, by the way, Charlotte's actually having kind of a nice, bounce back year, but still, that should not be the case. That shows you how bad the roster is. And coaching, by the way. So they're going to move on. Giannis wants to compete for titles, as he should. The Bucks want to rebuild, which they can't do right now with Giannis there, which they should. And so that leads us to the conversation, where's he going to end up with? Now, it was reported almost as soon as I went on air, if I can pull this up here, if I had, okay, this is Tim McMahon. We know Tim McMahon, one of the most trusted sources of the game of ESPN. He says, quote, I've been told by folks with the Spurs that we're not a home for Giannis. Now, that was the place I suggested going back to last offseason. Like, dang, San Antonio, they've got the assets. Obviously, pair him up with Wemby. That's the greatest, defensive front court, or at least, I guess, in the paint that we've seen in NBA history. Make it happen. San Antonio's like, okay, we've obviously got Wemby, but we've got De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle and Keldon Johnson. All these guys. Harrison Barnes has been a nice veteran for this team. We kind of like what we have. We feel like we can build this over time. We've got the assets that we have as it pertains to draft picks. Let's build this thing. I mean, my Warriors back in 2014 made a very similar decision, not quite to this, because the player I'm about to mention was not as good at his peak as Giannis is. But the Warriors they were about to make a deal for Kevin Love that would have included Klay Thompson. Warriors fans, including myself, are glad they didn't make that deal. So sometimes it's like, God, you've got a nice core, everything's meshing, it's working together, like stick with that. To me, the team that is most likely to trade for Giannis Antetokounmpo is the Houston Rockets, especially after the news that broke today about Steven Adams, who's going to have season-ending surgery, which just sucks. Steven Adams is a good dude. You hate to see that. But I didn't buy coming into the season, despite the hype, and I love Kevin Durant and Amin Thompson and Şengün. Once Fred VanVleet blew his ACL and was out for the season, I say, I'm out on Houston. They're missing their point guard. That's a devastating blow. Veteran presence. We know what VanVleet's been. He's NBA champion, the whole bit. You've still got a ton of draft picks. You would probably, they're not going to part from Amin Thompson. They're not going to part from Kevin Durant because KD is a win now type of piece to that puzzle. They will almost certainly have to get rid of Şengün, which for a player of Giannis' caliber, that's the cost of doing business. So I think it's most likely, people are suggesting the Knicks, the only way Giannis ends up on the Knicks is if he just wants to go to the Knicks. If he forces Milwaukee's hand, kind of like Kareem did, I believe in the 70s, I want to go to the Lakers. Okay, they send him to the Lakers, and Kareem won multiple MVPs and championships. That's the only way he ends up in New York. And I think, frankly, if you're Milwaukee, they're in a spot where it's, we want to compete long-term. And we want to compete long-term in a conference that does not include Giannis Antetokounmpo. We want to trade into the Western Conference. So Houston, to me, is clearly and obviously the number one trade destination because they have the best assets. I'll let Wendy, Brian Windhorst of ESPN, I'll let him take the floor. Wendy, go ahead.
Don't prioritize trades that bring in players that could help them now, because the Bucks are in a position where they need to worry about this year's draft pick. They need to tank the rest of this season, improve this year's draft pick, and have themselves in position to rebuild as fast as possible. And that's what they're looking for. And a team, if they're going to make a straight up trade, you're looking at teams that can give the most opportunities. The Golden State Warriors are a team that immediately rises to the top of the list. As far as the teams that are out there that can make a straight-up trade with the Bucks, not 2-team, 3-team, 9-team, 12-team trades. You can just make a team versus team trade. The Warriors hold all of their future draft assets. They can trade all of them, up to 4 firsts and swaps and stuff like that. Steph Curry is there. They have immediate need for a star player. This is where this discussion begins, is Golden State, and everybody else, I think, is going to have to try to beat a strong Golden State offer if it comes.
Crap. Chris Mannix of Sports Illustrated.
So what do the Warriors do at this point? From what I'm told, Golden State continues to be aggressive in looking to find upgrades before the trade deadline. There's no indication yet that Milwaukee is willing to deal Giannis Antetokounmpo, and most likely the Bucks are not going to deal Giannis before the trade deadline. But from what I'm told, the Warriors have made it known that if Milwaukee gets serious about trading Giannis, they're ready to make an offer. The package, I believe, would center around Jimmy Butler's contract, which has 1 year remaining on it, over $50 million, and Jonathan Kuminga for a Giannis headline package. Maybe Bobby Portis gets thrown into that deal as well to make all the money worth. And, of course, Golden State would have to throw a bunch of draft picks in to satisfy the demand of Milwaukee. So that's out there. If if Giannis becomes available. That's something I think that could be pushed by Golden State.
So, as you know, anyone that's watched this show over any length of time, I mean, you can see where my rooting allegiance is. And as people that might remember back in October, and we did a whole segment on this last week, I said that if Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green are healthy, the Warriors are my pick to win the title. Well, Jimmy Butler blew his ACL, and I'm like, okay, the season's over. And honest to God, I've even said this on the show, I've always felt like Giannis was a pipe dream. Honestly, I really, really have. Number one, because you weren't sure if or when Giannis was ever going to ask out of Milwaukee. That's number one. And number two, I mean, do we really have the assets to get him? Like, I mean, really, do we? The centerpiece would be a Jimmy Butler. Jimmy's hurt. Like, Jimmy's gone until, January of next year? But Windhorst does make an interesting point, as does Chris Mannix. Milwaukee's not looking for win-now players. Şengün's a win-now. I mean, he's a young player, but Şengün can help you win now. He led the Rockets to the 2 seed last year. Some people suggest Oklahoma City, Jalen Williams, win-now type of guy. By the way, I'm not even sure he fits that well with the Thunder moving forward, but that's another story. Jonathan Kuminga is a win-in-the-future player. Jimmy Butler is he can't help you do anything right now because he's hurt. Milwaukee could parlay that next year into draft picks or into players like blue chippers like Kuminga. What do the Warriors have? Draft picks. Not only do they have draft picks, but what do they have what is it that they don't have in common with OKC, with Houston, with a San Antonio? Is that over the next few years, those are going to be pretty high draft picks. I mean, Steph Curry's going to be 38 years old in 2 months. Like, the Warriors are going to be, in 2-3 years, one of the worst teams in basketball. As a Dubs fan, I've accepted that. Once Steph's either out of his prime or done, the Golden State Warriors are going to be hot garbage on the 4th of July. Which would entice a team like Milwaukee to want those picks. So we put together a trade, a hypothetical trade, for Giannis Antetokounmpo involving the Golden State Warriors. Go ahead and put that up. So and Mannix mentioned this, Bobby Portis, for salary reasons, would certainly have to be a part of the deal. His salary would, by and large, match up with Kuminga's. The Warriors get Giannis and Bobby Portis. The Bucks get Jimmy Butler, who they can later parlay into draft picks to a team next year that wants to, compete. Jimmy could do that. Jonathan Kuminga, 4 first-round picks. You see 2027 first, because here's the thing, 2026 is not going to be a good pick because, in theory, with Giannis, the Warriors will be pretty darn good. So that'll be a high, a late first-round pick. 2027, you don't know that. 2028, Steph's probably out of his prime by then. 2030 is a top 20 protected pick. I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Warriors aren't going to be contenders in 5 years, or 4 years, rather. I could be wrong. Hope I'm wrong. That's probably not going to be the case. And then 2031, they'll probably be garbage. You say, Bryson, man, the Dubs are screwed. Starting in, 2028 or so? 100% they'd be screwed. Because by that point, Steph's probably retired. Giannis is nearing the end of his prime, and you have no assets to deal with whatsoever. You also have Steph Curry. You also have the greatest player in the history of your franchise by a long shot. You have a player who has stuck through some lean years to start his career, some good years, then the dynasty years, some down years, then won a championship, then some mediocre years. When you fail to put a championship contending roster around him prior to Jimmy Butler, who's now out with an ACL. Part of what didn't get discussed enough about the Jimmy trade last year, the Warriors didn't give up a single draft pick. Not one. It was a 3-team deal. Dennis Schroeder, Kyle Anderson, and Andrew Wiggins. Which reportedly there's some mixed reporting. Brett Siegel said they're trying to trade Kuminga for Wiggins and get Giannis. That's not a realistic thing. You can't bring in Wiggins and Giannis. Salaries, it gets discombobulated. Second April, that's not a realistic prognostication for the Warriors. I wish it was, but it's not. If you are Joe Lacob, the owner, if you are Mike Dunleavy Jr., the general manager, and I've said this ad nauseum, when you have the greatest player in the history of your franchise, one of the greatest players of all time, one of the 10 greatest players who ever played the game. In his prime, by the way, still averaging 27 a game. He's still an all-star starter for crying out loud in year 17. It is your obligation to ensure he has as many chances to compete for a title as humanly possible. And between 2019 and early 2025, before the Jimmy Butler trade, the Warriors didn't do that and still got a title out of it. Now, that was 4 years ago. Steph isn't the player now that he was 4 years ago. He's still great. Still can lead you to a championship. It is your obligation. If you swing and miss on Giannis, so be it. You place all your damn chips in the middle of the table to get this guy. As far as I'm concerned, he's the second best player in basketball, and it would be the first time in Steph Curry's prime he is on a team with a guy definitively better than him. And y'all know how I feel about Steph. Giannis is better than Steph in 2026. So then you pair that with an aging, I'm concerned about it, Draymond Green, a great bench, and one of the 15 greatest coaches in the NBA history in Steve Kerr. Put your chips in the middle of the table. Now we've got a legitimate chance to contend. Do I believe this is going to happen? I'm probably 80-20 that it's not going to happen. But if the reporting is true that Milwaukee wants picks and they don't want win-now players, Warriors got that. You can say Jimmy Butler's a win-now player. They're going to trade Jimmy, probably in the offseason, to a team that is wanting to contend and want Jimmy to be kind of like their third option. So when I heard this reporting, of course, there's a part of me that gets a little excited and jittery and giddy, like, oh my gosh, we're back. Here we go. We're to get Giannis. I refuse to get my hopes up because we are talking about the second best player in basketball, two-time MVP, Finals MVP, Defensive Player of the Year. We know who Giannis is. Averages 30 and 10 on his in his sleep. But we're 8 days, well, I guess technically seven days and 21 hours away at the time of this recording from the deadline. Dunleavy, floor is yours. Let's see if he can make it happen. Not predicting it, not expecting it. What I do expect is if Giannis either gets dealt or stays in Milwaukee and ends up getting traded in July, I need the report to come out. Man, the Warriors exhausted all options and Milwaukee just wasn't interested. Okay, what can you do? But if they land him, I'll save that hypothetical for if this becomes a reality. Until then, I'm going to remain skeptical. I'm going to remain realistic. I'm going to sit back in my chair and watch. So that's where I'm at in the Giannis news. I maintain what I said earlier. I think Houston's the most likely destination. But if the reporting's true, as it pertains to draft picks, obviously Kuminga would be the center of a deal. Again, my sources have told me the Warriors probably aren't going to trade Kuminga unless Giannis becomes available. Well, he's available now. Yo it to Steph. What you going to do? We're going to take a 1-minute break on the show. When we come back, you know what? The Bills hiring Joe Brady is, I don't even hate the hire. I really don't. History would show this may not work. And history from a week ago would show. What were the Bills, what was their rationale in doing this? Get to that, as well as Bryce's best 10, my top 10 Super Bowls of all time at the end of the show. I'm warming up to Mike McCarthy just a little bit. Just a little bit. I'll get to all that in just 1 minute on Carving Up Live. Don't go anywhere, folks. We'll be right back. back to Carving Up Live. I appreciate everybody for stopping by on a Wednesday. So again, I'm just trying to, I really, you do not know the restraint, folks, that it is taking for me not to get really excited about the idea of Giannis Antetokounmpo becoming a Warrior. It's something I've thought about before. We know that something I didn't mention, Steph had I think it was a birthday party or something like that. Or no, Steph had like a party at the All-Star game because the All-Star game is in San Francisco last year. And Giannis was the only non-Warrior to show up. So we know Steph and Giannis, they're tight. Giannis back in 2022 after the Warriors won the title said Steph's the best player in basketball. So we know they are fond of each other. Now the question is Mike Dunleavy Jr. fond enough of Giannis to say, the hell with the future? We've got one of the greatest players in the history of the league, still in his prime, at the end of his prime, but he's still in it. Gear up for one or two more runs before we go into just complete oblivion. You have that. You owe that to Steph. Back to the NFL. So the Buffalo Bills have their new head coach. There's been, as of today now, with the Browns hiring Todd Monken, there were 10 head coach openings. Now it's down to 2. So the 7th of which was filled by Joe Brady, offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills. They're promoting him to be the new head coach. So recent history as it pertains to the last decade would tell you promoting a guy from your staff to being the head coach almost never works. We can show you that graphic. The last 10 coaches in the last 10 years promoted from the staff to being the head coach. Basically all of them but one have bombed. Or one and maybe a second. Ben McAdoo promoted to the Giants. Giants fans remember the Ben McAdoo era. It was pretty ugly. Dirk Cutter promoted the Bucks. 10 games under 500. Doug Marrone. Now, he did get the Jags to an AFC title game for what it's worth, but then some pretty bad years after that. 20 games under 500. Freddie Kitchens, awful hire by the Browns. They're kind of used to that. One season, they fired him. Lovie Smith with the Texans. Fired him. 3-13. Dennis Allen with the Saints. Fired him. 18-25. Todd Bowles, the only one that's on this list that's above 500. Bucks fans were calling for his head after this late season collapse. Antonio Pierce, which I called at the time a bad hire. 9-17. Gerard Mayo, 4-13. Say the Patriots are better off for moving on from him. Brian Schottenheimer, we're one season in. Like, there are some promising signs, but again, there's a reason he hadn't gotten a head coaching job until 2025. That one kind of remains to be seen. Bowles, decent with the Jets, pretty good with the Bucks. Everybody else on that list, awful. So recent history would tell you, you look outward. You look outward to try and find a new head coach, which they did try and do. I mean, they interviewed Phillip Rivers for the job, which he, pulled his name from consideration. I guess didn't want your first head coaching job to be, hey, go from high school to coaching Josh Allen. The fan base is expecting you to win a Super Bowl year one. That's not an easier way into a type of conversation. You are entering the Buffalo Bills expected to win a championship day one. What I'm also confused with, did we not just have a press conference last week with Terry Pegula, the owner of the Bills, and Brandon Beane, the GM of the Bills, mostly Pegula, saying, the failures and the shortcomings of this franchise, it stems from the coach and his coaching staff. Sean McDermott, who they fired, and his coaching staff. Because he pushed to draft Keon Coleman, who, by the way, need I remind everybody, is still on the team. So, not sure his relationship with Pegula is the greatest right now. He pushed to draft Keon Coleman. And basically all of the bad things that have happened with this franchise the last few years, they're the GM's fault. They're the GM's fault. Or the coach's fault. They're on Sean McDermott. So you hired his OC? Which, by the way, for the record, I've been a pro Joe Brady guy for a while in the sense that, hey, listen, he was Joe Burrow's passing game coordinator at LSU, basically called plays. That worked out okay. OC with the Buffalo Bills, that's worked out okay. But remember, he was also the OC back with the Carolina Panthers under, what's my man's name? Matt Rule. And, early in his brief tenure there in Carolina. That didn't work at all. So is Joe Brady reliant on, hey, I need a top 5 quarterback in order to be successful? Maybe, but he's got Josh Allen. And let's be honest, Josh went from a quarterback who was post, Brian Dable, who went to take the New York Giants head coaching job, 2022 and the first half of 2023 with Ken Dorsey calling plays. Josh was still great, but Josh was really erratic. Basically, what you saw in that playoff game against the Denver Broncos, that's what Josh Allen was doing every Sunday. He made plays that make you say, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like that too. Oh my God, I've never seen anything like that. What is he thinking there? as it pertains to kind of the boom or bust aspect of this particular player. Joe Brady kind of reined him in a little bit. Pass touchdowns went down. Pass yards per game went down. Passer rating went up. He was more efficient. They relied on the running game more with James Cook. Offensive line didn't put that much of an emphasis on wide receiver as we've seen, or when they did, Keon Coleman, that didn't work at all. I got to say, I don't think this is a bad hire just by virtue of inheriting the second best quarterback in football. It's hard to screw that up. And Sean McDermott didn't screw it up. I've always said Sean McDermott's a good coach. He took over a Bills franchise that was in the mud, got him to the playoffs year one prior to Josh ever getting there, and got him to 2 AFC title games. But I've said Sean McDermott is the Mark Jackson of the NFL. He can come there, build your culture, build a foundation. You're good with him. You're not going to get to the next level with him. I guess they're hoping Brady can be that guy. Maybe he is. He's an offensive coach, but he's an inexperienced offensive head coach. So I'm iffy on this move. I really, really am. And so the fact that there were this many people that pulled out of the job, man, that to me is an indictment on the front office and that press conference that we saw last week. So that's where we're at. Got a comment. Sliders 101 says Josh is the best QB in football. His defense failed him. There have been years where his defense has failed him. 2021, for example, in that 13-second playoff game against the Chiefs. But let's keep in mind that Josh Allen turned the ball over not once, not twice, not 3 times. He turned the ball over 4 times in that football game, including 2 of which gave the Denver Broncos 6 points, 1 of which could have led to 7 points. The fumble to start the second half. Buffalo's defense held firm, held Denver to a field goal. So Buffalo's defense was far from perfect, but Josh put him in that position. Josh has gotten the ball, each of the last 3 seasons with a chance to either tie or win the game. Came up empty all 3 times. 2023 against the Chiefs, 2024 against the Chiefs, this year against the Denver Broncos. If you are the alleged best quarterback in football, despite being 0-4 against Patrick Mahomes and being outplayed by him 3 out of those 4 times, and the one time you did not play him, it was a draw, you need to come up big in those moments. If you've revolutionized the way the positions play, we've never seen anything like him. Could you have 1 Super Bowl appearance on your resume? Well, just 1? That's all I'm asking. Just 1. You've had your opportunities. Same thing can be said for Lamar Jackson, but at least Lamar, as great as he is, and for as much he's taken by folks like myself for bad playoff performances, no one's elevating Lamar to, oh my gosh, we've never seen somebody like Lamar. He might play the position better than Brady, which has been said about Josh Allen. So that's where I'm at. Okay, so let me get a drink of water. Because we do a segment each and every Wednesday on the show, Bryson's Best 10, where I usually, during the NFL season, I rank just top 10 teams in the NFL. Well, of course, there's 2 left. If I ranked them, then that would pretty much give away my Super Bowl pick, and I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait till next Friday's show to make that prediction. So what we're going to do now is, since we are 11 days, I guess, away from Super Bowl 60, next Wednesday, I'll rank my top 10 players in the Super Bowl between the Patriots and the Seahawks. This week, let's look in the past. Let's look at the greatest 10 Super Bowls in the history of the National Football League. Starting at number 10, it is Super Bowl 13 between my Pittsburgh Steelers and the Dallas Cowboys. Pittsburgh won that game 35-31 at the Miami Orange Bowl back in 1979. So this game, if my research serves me correctly, featured like 26 Hall of Famers between Pittsburgh and Dallas. Obviously, for Pittsburgh, it's Terry Bradshaw, it's Lynn Swann, it's the Steel Curtain, Chuck Noll's the head coach. For the Cowboys, it's Roger Staubach and Drew Pearson and that doomsday defense and Tom Landry as the head coach. It was a shootout. Dallas made a late run in the game to make it competitive. Terry Bradshaw was nothing short of sensational in this matchup. Ended up winning the first of what would be 2 Super Bowl MVPs and leading the Steelers to their 3rd championship in franchise history. Pittsburgh over Dallas, Super Bowl 13, 35-31 is the 10th greatest Super Bowl in NFL history. At number 9, this to me is one of the most forgotten about Super Bowls that doesn't get enough love. Super Bowl 23 featuring the Cincinnati Bengals and the San Francisco 49ers, who won the game 20-16 back at Joe Robbie Stadium in 1989. Super Bowl 23 is the 9th best Super Bowl ever. Here's why. So obviously, Cincinnati is a team that had at that point, and still to this day, have not won a Super Bowl, came very close. That was a team that had, what's my guy's name? Quarterback who won league MVP Boomer Esiason as the quarterback for that squad. 49ers with Jerry Rice, Joe Montana, Bill Walsh calling the shots. And this was San Francisco's third Super Bowl, but first in over a half decade since 1984, I believe. So being able to get to this game in Miami, Joe Montana leads one of the greatest drives in the history of the Super Bowl, goes all the way down the field. I think it was 82 yards, hits John Taylor for the go-ahead game-winning touchdown, gives San Francisco their third Super Bowl championship in franchise history. They have since won 2 more. Number 8 on this list, 8th best Super Bowl of all time, is Super Bowl 34 between the St. Louis Rams, who beat the Tennessee Titans 23-16 in the Georgia Dome back in the year 2000. Rams over Titans back in 2000. Here's why. So this features one of the greatest endings that we've seen from any Super Bowl in history. But Kurt Warner completes the greatest. We talk about what Sam Darnold's doing right now is this great comeback story. Third overall pick, first round pick, bombs the Jets, bombs the Panthers. Back up in San Francisco. He's with the Minnesota Vikings, and they said 14 wins, we can do better than you. And he's obviously in the Super Bowl with Seattle. Kurt Warner's the ultimate comeback story. This is a guy who was undrafted, bagging groceries. He was with the Packers briefly, playing arena football, ends up getting signed by the St. Louis Rams, wins league MVP, and leads the greatest show on turf in 1999. Obviously, we're talking about Marshall Faulk, Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, like all of these great players on this squad. Dick Vermeil, as the head coach of this team, ends up coming down to the final seconds. Steve McNair, God rest his soul, the late great Steve McNair, leads the Titans in a scoring position, throwing a pass to slant. I believe it was Kevin Dice, if I'm not mistaken, gets tackled at the 1 yard line, just 1 yard short of what would have been, with an extra point, the game-tying touchdown with no time remaining, and would have led to the first overtime game at that point in Super Bowl history. All-time great Super Bowl ending. Rams over Titans is the 8th best Super Bowl in NFL history. At number 7, one that happened pretty recently, the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 57 back at State Farm Stadium in 2023. Chiefs over the Eagles 38-35. So this is one of the great all-time great shootouts we've seen in Super Bowl history. Philadelphia became the only team to ever score 35 or more points in a Super Bowl and lose. Jalen Hurts was phenomenal, accounted for, I think, 3 touchdowns in this game against Kansas, or 4 touchdowns this game against Kansas City. But Patrick Mahomes was nothing short of sensational. He already had an injured ankle coming to this game, hurts it before halftime, and in the second half, the Chiefs score every single possession. Touchdown, and then the game-winning field goal made by Harrison Butker to give Kansas City their second Super Bowl championship in what's been a dynasty. They've won one since then. But Mahomes was sensational. Again, the Chiefs literally, against the number 1 pass rush defense in the NFL at that point, Philadelphia, did not get stopped in the second half. And that's with a still prime Travis Kelce. But we're talking Juju Smith-Schuster, Sky Moore, Kadarius Toney had a big punt return in this game. Nick Bolton had a touchdown of his own for Kansas City in the first half of Jalen Hurts, the one mistake Hurts made. This was an all-time great Super Bowl shootout. It is the 7th greatest game in 7th greatest Super Bowl of all time. At number 6, we're going back to the original Patriots dynasty win, Super Bowl 36, back in the Louisiana Superdome in 2002. The New England Patriots winning 20-17 over the St. Louis Rams. So, of course, we all recognize this as one of the greatest upsets in the history of the NFL. The Patriots were a 2-touchdown dog in this game. Got there, they survived the tuck rule game against the Raiders, beat Pittsburgh, Brady missing a lot of that game due to injury. Rams come in, they're rolling, they're the greatest show on turf. It was billed going into this game. A dynasty's going to start tonight in New Orleans. Well, that was right. It was just the wrong team. New England ends up starting a dynasty that would produce 6 Super Bowl championships in 18 years. And listen, I know I bashed Belichick earlier. He is still an all-time great defensive coach. There's no question about that. To hold this Rams offense to 17 points, to 3 points until they kind of got hot in the fourth quarter, tied it at 17. Ty Law had a pick 6, in this game. Tom Brady, the late great John Madden, on Fox with Pat Summerall is talking about, man, I think I'd take a knee, play for overtime. Brady goes boom, 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 right down the field. Adam Vinatieri hits the walk-off field goal, and the Patriots win a championship and complete the upset. It started a dynasty. That is the 6th greatest Super Bowl of all time. A lot of these games are going to include the New England Patriots dynasty, by the way. This one, Patriots fans probably won't like so much. The 5th, the greatest Super Bowl of all time, is Super Bowl 52 back at UNS Bank Stadium in 2018. The Philadelphia Eagles over the Patriots 41-33. So we got another shootout. Super Bowl 52 is the 5th greatest Super Bowl ever. So listen, we talk about underdog stories with Kurt Warner. Nick Foles' ultimate underdog story. This Eagles team, 13 wins in the regular season, 1 seed in the NFC, underdogs in every single playoff game against the Falcons, Minnesota, and then obviously against the, at the time, defending Super Bowl champions, the New England Patriots. So Tom Brady has maybe his best Super Bowl of his career. Throws for 500 yards, 3 touchdowns, is magic in this game. Gets strip sacked, though, by Brandon Graham late. Before that, Nick Foles, 3 touchdowns in this game. The Philly special, which some Patriots fans like to complain, oh, it was an illegal play. Multiple officials have come out and said, no, that was legal because Foles was not under center for the play. The guys, whoever snapped it, was not below center for the play. Trey Burton threw the touchdown pass to Foles. All-time great shootout. Who'd have thought Foles-Brady would be an all-time great quarterback shootout matchup? Bill Belichick, who, again, I ripped earlier in the show. Where was that defense? Where was that defense against Foles in this Philadelphia offense? Eagles won their first Super Bowl in franchise history. That is the 5th greatest Super Bowl of all time. Patriots fans also won't like this one. At number 4, something about, listen, Arizona, State Farm Stadium in particular, has gotten 3 of the best Super Bowls that we've ever seen. At number 4, it is Super Bowl 42. The New York Giants beating the New England Patriots 17-14 at University of Phoenix Stadium in 2008. Giants over Pats, the first go-around before obviously they got another W in 2011. So listen, the Giants come in, a wild card team, Coughlin, Eli Manning, Strahan in his farewell tour, coming in against the undefeated kings of the NFL. Previous 3 Super Bowl, they've won 3 Super Bowls in the previous 6 years prior to this. Tom Brady, 50 touchdowns, MVP of the league. Randy Moss, Offensive Player of the Year. All of it coming undefeated, double-digit favorites. And the New York Giants come in. They hold that defense. Strahan, Umenyiora, Justin Tuck, all those guys holding that Patriots offense to 14 points. And 7 of those came in the final minutes when Brady hit Moss for the go-ahead touchdown. It's 14-10. Patriots are going to do this thing. They're going to go undefeated. Michael Strahan goes to the sideline, looks at the offensive player. It's one of the iconic, mic'd-up moments in Super Bowl history. He looks at him, I'm paraphrasing, but 17-14, the New York Giants are Super Bowl champions. Believe it, and it will happen. And Eli Manning, after almost throwing a game-ending pick to Asante Samuel, goes down the field. Obviously, iconic helmet catch on 3rd and 11 by David Tyree. You got what's my man's name? But Plaxico Burress catching the go-ahead touchdown to win the game for the New York Giants. Brady almost hit Randy Moss for what would have been the all-time greatest play in Super Bowl history. Would have been like a 70-yard throw to Moss for the game-winning touchdown, but it was knocked away. All-time great Super Bowl. The Patriots are indisputably the 07 Patriots, greatest team of all time. If they win this game, Giants over New England is, in 2007, is the 4th greatest Super Bowl ever. Pats fans will like this one. The greatest comeback in Super Bowl history by a long shot. Super Bowl 51, NRG Stadium in Houston, 2017. The Patriots over the Falcons, 34-28. So I don't even need to do much explaining with this one. We're talking about a team that's down 28-3. We're talking about a Falcons team led by the MVP and Matt Ryan. Julio Jones, one of the most physically gifted receivers we've seen. They go up 28-3. Brady threw the pick 6 late first half. And they go down and score. Throw a touchdown. Brady throws a touchdown to James White. Okay, it's 28-9, and the Patriots get a stop. And then they go down and they end up making a field goal, hitting a field goal. It's 28-12, 2-score game. 3rd and 1. Love Kyle Shanahan. Not sure why he didn't run the ball in that situation. Matt Ryan gets stripped by Dante Hightower. Gets recovered. Brady hits Amendola for a touchdown, and then a play that they actually ran in the AFC title game against Denver. Run a direct snap to James White. 2-point conversion. 28-20. Julio Jones makes one of the greatest Super Bowl catches ever, only for penalties and a sack to knock Atlanta out of field goal range. Brady, 90-yard drive, White touchdown, hits Danny Amendola for the 2-point conversion, and then in overtime, boom, 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 Tom Brady tossing it to James White, who runs it in for the game-winning touchdown. 31 unanswered points. They were down 25 with 17 minutes left in the game. End up scoring 25 to tie the game, and then obviously the go-ahead drive to win it in OT. I don't remember the Atlanta Falcons complaining about bad overtime rules and getting the rules changed like the Buffalo Bills, but that's none of my business. Patriots winning Super Bowl 51. It cemented Tom as the GOAT. It cemented the Patriots as the greatest dynasty in NFL history. That is the 3rd greatest Super Bowl of all time. So what might be above it, you might ask? Well, number 2 involves my team. At number 2, Super Bowl 43 at Raymond James Stadium. I've been there in Tampa. Beautiful stadium. 2009, Steelers over Cardinals 27-24. 32-23. Pittsburgh over Arizona, second greatest Super Bowl of all time. Here's why. So again, this is the ultimate David versus Goliath. Like we knew the Steelers were coming in, 5 Super Bowl championships. They'd already won 4 with the Steel Curtain. Big Ben, Bill Cowher, the bust Jerome Bettis, and that great defense won one in 2005. A few years later, Mike Tomlin's the head coach. His second year with the franchise. You've got the great defense. Big Ben's now at this point in his prime. Coming against this Cardinals team with a Kurt Warner who is, just damaged goods at this point, comes back, wins league MVP for the Arizona Cardinals, leads them to the Super Bowl. And initially it's, oh my gosh, Arizona's hanging in there. Looks like they're going to score right before the half. James Harrison completes the first 14-point play in Super Bowl history. Because the Cardinals were virtually at the goal line. James Harrison picks off a pass, runs it 100 yards to the house, and scores a touchdown for Pittsburgh. A 14-point swing in this game. But the Cardinals scratch and claw back in this game. Larry Fitzgerald, who's going to go in the Hall of Fame this year, by the way, catches a touchdown pass from Kurt Warner. Oh, my God, the Cardinals are going to do it. And Big Ben Roethlisberger and Santonio Holmes in particular get the Steelers down the field. Holmes makes the greatest toe tap catch in Super Bowl history, back right corner of the end zone, and Pittsburgh wins their 6th thus far. Their most recent Super Bowl title, 6th Super Bowl championship. Steelers over the Cardinals, Super Bowl 43 is the second greatest Super Bowl of all time. And number 1 on this list, folks, we're getting the rematch in 11 days. It is Super Bowl 49 with the New England Patriots beating the Seattle Seahawks 28-24 back at University of Phoenix Stadium in 2015. 11 years later, we get the rematch of what is, in my mind, the greatest Super Bowl ever played. Here's why. So you've got Tom Brady coming in 10 years removed, by the way, from his last Super Bowl championship. So it's like, oh, is Tom done? That was the on to Cincinnati year with Bill Belichick. Tom Brady played great the second half of the year. Gronk, Edelman. Patriots come in, great offense. Seattle Seahawks, Legion of Boom, Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, Bam Bam, Cam Chancellor, Bobby Wagner, all these guys. Legion of Boom, best defensive football, who just annihilated the MVP Peyton Manning the year prior. So what happens? Patriots score 7-0. Seahawks score, they answer. Patriots score again with 30 seconds left in the half. Seahawks with 30 seconds left in the half, score a touchdown of their own. It's 14-14. Tom Brady had a couple picks in this game. Seahawks go in the fourth quarter. They're up 10 points. It looks like it's over. Seattle's going to go back-to-back. Brady leads a drive, hits Danny Amendola for a touchdown. It's 24-21. They get a stop. Patriots, boom, boom, boom down the field. Julian Edelman with a big-time in-and-out route. Brady hits him in the left corner of the end zone. 28-24. New England's going to win this game. Russell hits beast mode on a 30-yard pass. He hits Jermaine Kearse on one of the great circus catches you'll ever see. It bounces off his leg, his arm, hauls it in at the 5-yard line. 1 minute to go. Oh, my gosh, Seattle's going to do this thing. We all know the story next. Russell Wilson hands the ball to Marshawn Lynch. Dante Hightower kind of saved the season right there. Shoestring tackle, beast mode stopped at the 1. It's 2nd and goal. Belichick's not using a timeout. And, of course, if y'all remember, a rookie free agent from West Alabama, Malcolm Butler, steps in front of a throw by Russell Wilson to Ricardo Lockett, hauls it in, jumped the pass, tackled at the 1. Patriots win their first Super Bowl in a decade. It's one of the most iconic endings, one of the most controversial endings as it pertains to play calling. It does not get better than Super Bowl 49. If the game in 11 days between the Patriots and the Seahawks even resembles this game, oh, ladies and gentlemen, we are in for a classic. Super Bowl 49 is the greatest Super Bowl I have ever seen and the greatest Super Bowl of all time. That's what I got. It's just all-time legendary game. I mean, the greatest moment of Brady's career is the 25-point comeback on Atlanta. It does not get talked about enough that he hung 28 points on the Legion of Boom, one of the greatest defenses in modern NFL history. And does so down 10 in the fourth quarter. Like, it's the second greatest Brady comeback in Super Bowl history, and not quite the level of difficulty as down 25 to Atlanta, but not that far off either. Let's go back over the list if we have it here. My top 10 Super Bowls of all time. So from 10 to 1, Super Bowl 13 in 1979, Super Bowl 23 in 1989, Super Bowl 34 in 2000, Super Bowl 57, 2023, Super Bowl 36 in 02, and then the top 5 are as follows: Super Bowl 52, 2018, Super Bowl 42, 2008, Super Bowl 51, 2017, Super Bowl 43, 2009, and Super Bowl 49, 2015. And folks might be asking, like, a lot of these are pretty recent, Bryson. Like, it feels like a little bit of a Gen Z bias going on with this. I went back and looked. Super Bowls used to not be that competitive. I mean, if you think about, in my mind, the 5th greatest quarterback of all time, John Elway. John Elway, in multiple Super Bowls prior to going back-to-back in 97 and 98, got the doors blown off him multiple times in the Super Bowl with Denver. I did the math. And again, this is more opinion than it is, is it one-score game? I counted 9 excellent Super Bowls in the 20th century, 14 in the 21st century. So we've been blessed with some good ones. All those Brady Super Bowls, some of those Kansas City games, the Pittsburgh Green Bay game, which didn't make the list 2010. There were some honorable mentions. Super Bowl 32. Not Super Bowl 32. That was on the list. Which one was it? No, the Super Bowl 38. I apologize. Super Bowl 38, Patriots beating the Panthers 32-29. All-time great shootout in that one. Jake Delhomme, Steve Smith Sr., and that Panthers team. In Super Bowl 45, Packers over my Steelers back in 2010 was a great game. It was Aaron Rodgers' only Super Bowl title. Super Bowl 56, pretty recently, Rams and Bengals came down the wire. Stafford led the game-winning drive. Cooper Kupp's MVP. Should have been Aaron Donald, in my opinion. And then Super Bowl 58, just 2 years ago, only the second overtime game in Super Bowl history between the Chiefs and the 49ers. So we've gotten some good ones, and most of them have been pretty recent. Going to take a 1-minute break. When we come back, speaking of Super Bowl winning organizations, am I feeling a little bit of a soft spot for Mike McCarthy? I think so. Talk about that in just 1 minute before we get out of here on Carving Up Live. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Carving Up Live. Appreciate everybody for stopping by on this unexpectedly jam-packed Wednesday show. I mean, I did not expect to be doing Belichick Hall of Fame stuff. The Joe Brady news, head coach hirings, that's pretty normal for this time of year. The Giannis news, which, again, like I said, I'm 80-20. He will not be a Warrior. But it is 20. It's something. As Brian Windhorst and others have pointed out, I don't think it's Wendy. I don't want to misquote him. As other insiders have pointed out, Wendy pointed out the Bucks don't want win now players because they want to tank and rebuild. Others have pointed out, the Warriors are going to suck in like 2 or 3 years, so those picks are going to be really, really attractive. Milwaukee might want that more than Houston's picks, or San Antonio's not going to make a deal for Giannis, or a team like Oklahoma City. Something. Like I said, the Warriors have an obligation to ensure Steph always has a chance to compete while he is still in his prime. And right now he is not in that position with Jimmy Butler out. Speaking of another one of my teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers. So again, on Saturday when the news came out, the Steelers hire Mike McCarthy, I was just inconsolable. I'm like, we get offensive Mike Tomlin. And the reason I say that, if we have the graphic between Mike McCarthy and Mike Tomlin, do we have it? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. We do not. It doesn't look like. Either way, resumes are almost identical. Seasons coached, division titles, playoff appearances. Tomlin has a better regular season winning percentage. McCarthy has a better postseason winning percentage. They're the same guy, just coach different sides of the ball. But the more I thought about it, I'm like, okay, he's an offensive guy. That's good. Big Ben Roethlisberger talked about that on his podcast recently. Like, hey, McCarthy's an offensive guy. The Steelers need that. That's good. Mike McCarthy can develop young quarterbacks. Steelers maybe have somebody in Will Howard. I'm not that optimistic as other Steelers fans are. Hopefully I'm wrong. But even if I am wrong, Steelers could have a potentially good draft pick in a great quarterback draft, a great quarterback class in 2027. And if they move some veterans like some expensive veterans like TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Jalen Ramsey, DK Metcalf, You could acquire a lot of picks that you already have a bunch of picks as is right now just for 2026. You got a first, a second, 3 thirds, 2 fourths. Like, the Steelers are in good position as it pertains to draft capital. But Mike McCarthy had his opening presser yesterday, as every coach who gets hired does. And just, I won't spoil anything. Take a listen to McCarthy if you haven't heard this yet.
All right, here we go. Thank you, Art. I think I thought at least be able to get started. Oftentimes coaches and players, you put on new team colors, and it takes a minute to feel comfortable in those new colors. But to be blessed beyond any measure, one day to put on the colors you wore since you brought home. I apologize. Brett, I told you not to sit my family down here in front. This is so unfair. When you come home from Mercy Hospital, I do want to thank Art Rooney, Omar Khan, Dan Rooney, and the entire Steelers organization for the trust they placed in me to represent one of the most storied franchises in all of sports. I understand and embrace the responsibility, the privilege, and the weight that comes with this stewardship. This city, this franchise, this fan base means the world to me because Pittsburgh's my world, and it's just awesome to be back here.
Dadgummit, man. Who's cutting onions? Shoot. I mean, like, listen, any Steelers fan that either hated the hire, was skeptical about the hire, or I guess loved the hire. Everybody's pulling for Mike McCarthy. I mean, everybody's pulling for him. Like, again, we knew he was from Pittsburgh, grew up there. I remember when the Cowboys went to Pittsburgh back in the 2024 season, back in week 5. NBC did a great sort of presentation about McCarthy's roots there, and he started his coaching career in his younger days at Pitt, and then obviously he's worked his way up the ranks, obviously before becoming the Packers coach, Cowboys coach, now the Pittsburgh Steelers coach, which I imagine would, if McCarthy had his way, it's his last coaching job, and then he can win some Super Bowls and ride off in the sunset. So, again, going back to the glass half full view of this hire, is that for as almost identical as McCarthy and Tomlin's resumes are, one thing that is true, and the reason I think at worst case scenario, at least the Steelers got a better coach than they had. And the reason I say that is Mike Tomlin not a defensive coach? Yes, he is. Had the Steelers not paid more than any franchise in the NFL the last 5 years on defense? Yes, they have. Can we see what Mike Tomlin, with his defense has been ranked in his career? Because early on, man, it was first, fifth, second, first. I mean, some great defenses in there because he inherited Cowher's team. Then you get to 21st, 12th, 5th, 6th, 5th, 3rd, 24th, 13th, 21st, 12th, 26th. Mike McCarthy, where of his offenses rank, because he is an offensive coach, as we all know, pretty darn good, especially recently. He was first in 2021, 11th in 2022 with Cooper Rush starting 5 games, 5th in 2023, and then last year, Dak was out half the season, 17th. Wasn't very good. Cowboys offense wasn't very good, but that's what it is. So what I hope comes with this, because listen, just by virtue of being from Pittsburgh, I mean, even his parents, their wife, like this is where he wants to be. Good for him. What I want to see this franchise shift into is one that values the offensive side more than the defensive side. Now, hiring Mike McCarthy seems to signal that. Like, okay, I would have preferred Nate Scheelhaus with the Rams because he's a young offensive coach from the McVay tree. However, McCarthy's an offensive guy. You know what else McCarthy has doesn't have in common with Mike Tomlin? A coaching tree. Tomlin has none. McCarthy currently has 3 guys who coached with him in the last 5 years who are head coaches. Kellen Moore, Dan Quinn, and Brian Schottenheimer. That's something. Quinn's had a lot of success in Washington. He went to an NFC title game. Kellen Moore, y'all know I'm not a Kellen Moore believer, but the Saints did play well at the end of the year. And Schottenheimer, based on the cards he was dealt by Jerry Jones, not terrible. So I want to see this franchise shift into more of an offensive mindset. I want to see, pull up the draft picks again. I want to see the first, at least 2 of the first 3 draft picks, one of them being the first rounder, spinning it on an offensive lineman. Building the offensive line and spinning the late round draft picks, maybe the 2nd, 4th rounder, 5th, two of the 3 6-rounders and 7th rounder, you do whatever, on building the defense, on building a young defense. Because TJ Watt, that is not the case. Cam Hayward, that is not the case. That is not the case with Jalen Ramsey. I think all three, unless Hayward wants to retire, obviously, certainly Ramsey and Watt, send them to places where they can win now, where they can have legitimate chances to compete for a Super Bowl. TJ Watt's never won a playoff game. He's never won a playoff game. I want to see TJ Watt play in big games. For his sake, great dude, awesome player, one of the greatest Steelers pass rushers ever. I want to see him compete, and I want the Steelers to get some assets for TJ and to have that big contract off the books. Same with Jalen Ramsey, who I was never really high on to begin with when it pertained to that trade. Shift into an offensive mindset. McCarthy has been successful in Green Bay, in Dallas. Well, he had Aaron Rodgers and Dak Prescott. Mike Tomlin at one point had prime Ben Roethlisberger, 2011 through 2014. He did not win a single playoff game in that span. But hey, listen, he had a non-losing season. I mean, just hang the banner at Acrisure, right? Hopefully, the Steelers franchise looks forward, looks in the future, and looks there, not in the present. Not what can get us to 9 or 10 wins and maybe get in the playoffs just by the skin of our teeth as the 7th seed or winning a bad AFC North. The Steelers, because they have Mike McCarthy, they will not be bad this year. As much as I would kind of like them to be bad, they won't be bad. But will 7 wins not just be, we can't take this as a franchise. We cannot fathom having 1 down year, maybe just 2 down years. Or as they say in Pittsburgh, down years, which, that's something else. McCarthy, the accent fits, obviously. He's a Pittsburgh guy. Like, you're pulling for him. Everybody in Pittsburgh's pulling. Every Steelers fan around America and around the world is pulling for Mike McCarthy. For as skeptical as I was the hire, at least he's an offensive guy who's had more successful offenses more recently than Tomlin has had successful defenses. Now, the thing they both have in common, not very good at managing the clock. That McCarthy's always been known for that. I've been one of the people saying, Tomlin's not great at game management, guys. So there will be bumps. There will be bruises. There will be some moments where I want to come in on Mondays on the show and pull my hair out. But at least this signifies, okay, we're going to value one side of the ball more than the other because we have valued the other. And mostly because of the coach, we haven't gotten the necessary production we need out of it. So there you go. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving It Up. We're likely going to do a show on Friday. It's not guaranteed. Again, got some other stuff going on in my personal life. So we should do a show on Friday. If we do, it will be pre-recorded. So still feel free to check out the show. Again, feel free to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit that big red subscribe button down there. It helps the channel grow exponentially. Like, share, comment, the whole bit. We got YouTube videos coming out the wazoo on the YouTube channel. Short clips on IG, TikTok. If TikTok will let me get some views, on YouTube, the whole bit. Check out all of those things. So feel free to check all that stuff out. Hope everybody has a great week. We'll see you potentially on Friday. If not, we'll definitely see you on Monday. Have a great week, everybody. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. Come on, Warriors. Make me happy. Come on. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.